All right, so wrapping up this segment, I guess I'll put two in quotes, but it's basically just all of the rotation players that are young on this Magic team going into this Celtic series. If you want to pick Paulo and Franz Wagner, if you want to throw in an Anthony Black in there, uh, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, they just made it out of the play-in, pretty much handled the Hawks fairly easily in the end with the final score, but you're going into a matchup with the Boston Celtics that a lot of people have coming out of the East. So I feel like that almost is going to let them play somewhat freely and just see what they can do, almost like a litmus test for this version of the Orlando Magic at this point. Obviously, they've dealt with injury this season, haven't quite been able to put together what people expected from this roster. But does Apollo and Franz duo, how do they look up against maybe the best duo in the league with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Are they going to look like a full tier below them? Or are there going to be games where they look like they're neck and neck and maybe we see a 7 seed Orlando Magic take 2, if not 3 games off this Boston Celtics team? And then with Anthony Black, like if he's playing the point for them, I'm assuming they're going to throw Drew Holiday in that matchup and just see if a young point guard like that can handle that. I'm not sure if he'll be able to, but he does have some nice size, which I guess could help. But Drew Holiday is so strong, so I'm interested to see what some of those young guys are able to do against a Boston Celtics team.
I think Paolo's probably the most important piece to this. Like, if he'll be able to get to his stuff efficiently, more so than he did in the regular season, I think that would give them a better chance to put up a fight. But I agree that like Anthony Black is also going to be like a really big piece to it. I think even more so than Franz in just the way that I think you kind of know what you're going to get from Franz. I think in order for them to actually compete in this series, like Anthony Black is going to have to raise his play to a level that we haven't seen in the NBA quite yet. Like we've seen flashes of it, of him being able to consistently knock down open threes every once in a while for a couple games. But I think he's going to have to put together a really good shooting series for them to even be competitive. So that's who I probably would say I'm watching the most on that Magic team is how Anthony Black's going to play on the offensive end.
I do want to give some praise to Anthony Black, though, just because I remember coming in, I think the shot was always the biggest question, and he's still like a 30% shooter in the regular season, but he was 3 for 3 in that play-in game that they just had, and I think the fact that he's even taking shots comfortably and not just, being like a Ben Simmons out there, I think that's a radical example. But I think just the fact that he's willing to, try and like stretch the defense and make himself a reliable threat out there is big for his growth in the long term. And I hope that's an area of his game that he keeps developing, just because I think that obviously with the size and like some of the decision making that he has, I think that makes him a highly valuable prospect. But on a team like the Magic, where we were just talking about their defensive struggles, and it feels like they have a lot of players who are kind of the same old, gritty, will do the little things, but aren't maybe the most efficient players offensively. And I really hope that Black continues to be kind of the guy that we saw in the play-in, because I think that'll play a part in him staying on the Magic long term. I think ultimately they are going to, at least in my perspective, I think that they are going to try to build a championship duo around Banchero and Franz. But I think how this team looks right now, I think there's going to be a lot of changes personally.
Yeah, and Cam, to your credit about like last playoff run with the low scoring kind of ugly games against Cleveland, I almost feel like they're going to need to do that more with Boston, because this Boston team, especially if they're at full strength, they're going to run you 5 out. And if you're not able to keep up with the shooting and you can't play defense, we might be looking at 20, 30-point blowouts. But if they are able to at least just mix it up, force some tougher threes, then rather than getting in rotation and allowing, Derek White to get 5 or 6 threes up that are uncontested, if you can force Tatum to, even though he can make them, shoot 4 or 5 sidestep threes over outstretched hands, I feel like that's really the only way they're going to be able to get it done. But yeah, it's kind of a tough draw for this team, because they've already gone through so much turmoil this season, and to pick up a Celtics matchup in your first round, and then to go back-to-back years out in the first round, it's a really, really tough draw.